Here we are looking at the Tuesday report with the markets up near their all-time highs and at 25% expansion range. The outlook is, well, not to go up excessively, possibly down or choppy at best. Within that kind of climate, we then look for the rotation, where to find the next opportunities within the individual shares. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this week's report with Gary Glover. Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, Lou, Chris.
We've looked at this marker on the calendar for some time. You've put it into the 2025 blueprint all the way back in January and said this is the end of the sweet spot. We seem to have come to this around that 25% expansion range. For those who aren't too familiar with it, I'll just highlight it as you talk us through that what you see from here, where it's sort of middle of August, coming towards the middle of August. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so really, so the first week of April for the first week of August is kind of the sweet spot there. So we might slightly overshoot that or might undershoot it, but we haven't undershot it. We've sort of, sometimes they can sort of start earlier and late March there, but pretty much the low came in, I think, 7th of April. Yeah, and we're sort of going to sort of run through sort of to, past the 7th of August there. So you might run another week here. So I actually don't think we'll run another week here, Chris. I think, we might run through end of the week, like get a rate cut here, or maybe the US might get one soon, get a little bit buoyant. But I think we're probably just due for a pause here. So, so I think the Nasdaq has gone to the pretty close to the 25% expansion there. The other markets are a little short. S&P hasn't quite gotten there. Like XJO hasn't quite got there. So maybe they'll do some sort of broadening pattern there, but feel like we're sort of either going to have a bit of a pause here or a bit of a pullback there. But just don't see deep pullbacks either. That's the sort of the strange thing in here. We don't sort of typically see big pullbacks there. Last time I did say that we did end up with an 8% drawdown, so it did end up being a little bit larger than it normally was. But yeah, again, this one here, I just don't see that. Yeah, also where it is as well, we're just sitting up just above the high. So you normally want to, I think that sort of 60-year cycle there, and even quite a few other sort of cycles as well, when that came through the high, went pretty close to that sort of quarter range. Then it sort of tucked in and got went sideways, that little ABC, exactly like you highlighted it. And then it's finished the year high there. So it's often gone through to, say, the 138 or the 150 extension and then finish the move here. So, so it just might get messy here, Chris. We are starting to see a few stocks starting to break down here. So we're seeing the insurers break down. Interesting, sort of JB Hi-Fi had a pretty decent result there, but sort of sold off on the back of that. So I think you're going to start to see a bit more of this sort of little bit of profit taking there, because a lot of stocks are pretty extended here. So, so it's going to make it pretty tough here. So this is, so you're not going to get, I don't think you get massive pullbacks in the market here, but it's going to be pretty choppy here. So I think it is a period of sort of time to maybe lighten off a little bit and get less aggressive.
Time to lighten off and get less aggressive. I like that. It's a good summary, as you have earmarked it for some time. And in the commentary above that I highlighted, you had this going through till October. You've mentioned on the ASX. Does that follow through to the ASX as well? You're looking for that October period. So you're sort of in that sort of messy period, August to October. And then that's what you've got earmarked on your calendar is when to sort of look for the next turning point.
Yeah, look, seasonally, August and September, kind of weaker months. The fifth years, normally sort of that sort of September, October, into October lows are sort of quite common. And the post-election year, which this is as well, that August, September is pretty weak as well into usually early October. So most of the cycles are kind of matching up here this year. And considering we've sort of hit the sweet spot right on the, almost nailed it so far, just got to respect those cycles that are running here. I say sometimes they can go a little bit further. They can overshoot to the downside and can overshoot there. But yeah, we're in that sort of period here now where we're, we're in the high risk zone for a pullback here, or a consolidation there. And I think the Dow's pretty interesting as well. That's a really, it stayed under the high there. So it's one of the few indices that hasn't gone to a new high. So that's a nice setup here, because that leaves us, if we get a nice, that's the third touch, and sometimes you can get a fast move back from there. But this could set up potential, larger cup and handle setup here. If we have a nice messy pullback there over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, we might get a nice handle here, Chris, which leaves us set up for that rally kind of, from October into, December, January. So that would be, that's the chart here. So hopefully we get that set up there. So maybe something back to 42,000, but could be very messy. It could be very time consuming. But that would be ideal setup there. So that's probably the chart I'll be watching pretty closely here over the next month or two, just to sort of see. We want to see some retreat there, but we don't want to see any major sell down there. We want to see probably volume, like typical handle there, Chris. We want to see probably volume be a bit lighter as well. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay, so market participation to drop off a little bit as the market eases August, September. Normally they're weaker months, so that could play out. The question then becomes, looking within that rotation, that choppy period, okay, we're not going to get big, strong gains from the indices. We're not going to get that shooting the lights out, but there will still be opportunities within the market and we want to trade them. So where do we look? In this week's report, you've got Adairs ADH. It's coming through this sort of sideways channel down the bottom. What do you want to see from Adairs in this? Really.
Yeah, just noticed a few stocks that have sort of gone. They've been kind of pretty hard there. Maybe sold and then go through a little bit of tightening pattern. Just seen a few of those emerge here, even a few late comers as well, which have come through. So this is a pattern that we have seen a bit of here in the last few weeks, and sort of quite a few stocks have sort of come out of those ranges there. So just thought, some of those retailers there potentially might sort of get a little sweetener here if we get a rate cut today. Retail sector, obviously, that's quite favourable for them. So just a sector to keep an eye on there. But so I've got a few opportunities there that I'm looking at. But to be honest, I'd sort of probably scaled back. I've taken a few little positions there this week, but I've actually scaled. I've knocked one back here. So I've sort of taken a few. So I thought, no, that's enough. I don't want to extend my. Again, in more of my lines, I really don't get too heavily exposed here. So I've taken the first 3 trades here, and that's it. I haven't taken the 4th trade. I think I'll just
So you're talking about 4 parcels in the one company. You've sort of
there's 4 recommendations in there. So I've only taken 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that fits into the context of the August, September weakness, expecting some choppy periods, identifying setups, but really looking for the best setups that you can find possible. And then also,
I just don't want to get too aggressive here. I just feel like the sort of market's pretty, I literally went through the orders this morning, like 500 charts, and, struggled to find, probably like 2 handfuls of opportunities. There's not much to sort of really get excited about here. So, and we're starting to see a few things break down. So that's starting to tell me that some risk here. So, so just maybe don't get too carried away here. And I think, I saw yesterday, a few retail stocks started to actually trade down. So I thought, the leaders are starting to break down here. That's not a good sign either. So, so this AX1 there, that's probably the one that I sort of dropped out. I thought, no, may not sort of
give you what you need.
Yeah. I mean, it's stayed nice and tight. It's had a nice little rally there, gone sort of square here, but I mean, I did like to look at this one the last couple of weeks, but I thought just for the sake of sort of trying to keep my wrist low, I stuck with the other trades.
Then let's look at the other ones, which is Ansell ANN. You've got the weekly chart here, and it does seem to be broadening, but it seems to have a bit of a flaw that it's created here, just under $30, maybe $29.70 or $80 or something like that.
Yeah.
What are you looking for from Ansell?
You get 2 things there. You got sort of broadening, sort of what they call a broadening bottom there. And then it has broken out of that sort of that channel, which is a good sign there. The volume's kind of healthy. And then also on the shorter term frames as well, Chris, we do have a bit of a contraction as well, pattern as well. So that first leg down is larger than the second leg down. So it's sort of tightening action there. So I actually thought if we saw a little bit of a tight little action, maybe hug that channel line and then break up. That would be probably the little signal there. So, yeah, so I thought this looked pretty positive there. I like to look at this on the weekly. And yeah, so, it is a bit of a defensive, you might sort of say, Ansell as well. So, if the market is going to be pretty choppy here, then maybe some of the defenses might, we saw sort of Woolies and stuff have a bit of a bounce here recently. So just send to those defenses sort of look a little bit improved.
Well, the next one is IDP Education IEL being the ticker. It has been on a tumultuous ride the last couple of months with a massive drop off a cliff, but it does seem to be trawling something out. So it's not quite bottom trawling because it has shown a fair bit of time across here and a fair bit of volume changing hands down at these lower levels.
Yeah.
Not continuing to go lower. In fact, it looks like it's headed higher. I can't quite see if there's a 0, 1, 2, 3 there. It looks pretty stretched, so maybe not. But at least the August low seems to be higher than the previous low.
Yeah, look, it's definitely a lagger there. It's pretty weak here, but it has sort of mapped out a bit of a base there. So, and then we have seen elevated volumes as well for quite a period there. So it hasn't sort of continued to go down. It's really sort of flatlined there. We just sort of started to poke its head out of the top of that range as well. So, and that comes along with the news that the Albanese government's going to increase immigration there, which we obviously positive for IDP education there, with obviously more immigration there means more students coming in, and the market will be encouraged by that because that's been an issue for them the last year or two as less students, international students coming through. So that's definitely going to be a beneficiary of that policy there, and the market's kind of showing that a little bit as well. So yeah, so one to keep an eye on there. I haven't actually bought this one there, but I thought this one looked pretty interesting just because you've sort of got a trigger, a catalyst, and you've also got a technical break as well. So it has been a laggard there. I mean, the plus there is that it is about the 50, Chris, because it has been going sideways for so long here now. It's now sort of tracking above the 50-day moving average. So it's not, you don't normally sort of see that for stocks that's on its knees like this. So, but you'd like to see that 50 start to flatten out and turn up here. So maybe we'll get a bit more of a base here, but definitely one to keep an eye on here. Maybe if we get a series of high lows here, an interesting base building here, this could be one to watch.
Well, we'll look for that to be one to watch. But another one that you've looked at once or twice before is Reliance Worldwide RWC in the plumbing space. Very good exposure from the international side of things, not just the domestic construction industry.
Yeah.
This has been through, you've had some downward trend lines and it's broken through it, and then another downward trend line. They've broken through that again to then create this sort of box formation, this rectangle, and it's sitting just on the edge of it, on the cusp of it. So
Yeah.
it had a positive situation that it's sort of building this.
It'd be more positive if it was going up faster. Because it had that impulsive move and then it had the contraction, and then normally you'd pop out there. So the thing is, we have sort of popped out here, but we did come back and make a margin on new low, which is not that uncommon. That's quite common to do that, and then to have a bit of impulsive rally, then come out of that range. But it has been taking a while to build here, and the volume profile looks pretty good. There's sort of good volume on that low there, and then it sort of dried up on the contraction, and then we've seen volume pretty steady here in the last 3 or 4 days as well. So volume is looking quite positive here. It's just the reluctance to sort of get going here is the concern there. So yeah, I do think it looks quite good, but yeah, it's just that Wyckoff theory comes back to sort of remind me that you should move. If you're having good up days and good volume, you should be moving freely. And if you're just sort of hitting a wall there, then it's just a wall of selling there. But maybe at some point that a downward phase and you pop through it, or the selling is so heavy that you just can't permeate it, and then it overcomes you. So I'm hoping it's the early one, but yeah, it is interesting price action there. Just the volume profile looks pretty positive, but yeah, it's taken a while here. You just prefer to sort of see this get going there. It's just that's the negative there. Is that I've been watching this one for quite a while, but yeah, the fact that we just got a few high lows and the volume profile looks looks kind of positive there. So, but you want to keep it pretty tight there. One thing I've noticed there, the last few trades I've put on here, I've just kept definitely a tighter range now. I'm prepared to still sort of put a few trades on there, but I really don't want to have the same sort of risk on, Chris. I want to be a bit lighter here.
Yeah. Well, it definitely fits into what you were talking about before. We've had the end of the sweet spot. It's volatile at best, possibly a bit of a pullback. So that all fits in with your market outlook and the blueprint for 2025. Jumbo Interactive, another one that has sort of come down. We're looking at the weekly chart here. So it has fallen. You talked about the jackpots. It just didn't end up growing and growing, being in the gambling space. You drive past a news agency, oh, there's $100 million jackpot tonight. That just brings in more and more ticket sales. So it does help their earnings. And you've talked about it comes in cycles and ebbs and flows. Fundamentally, the company hasn't changed. And we know that historically, cost of living crisis, Australians become even better at gambling than they have been. So how does all of that fit into the chart that we're seeing in front of us and what you'd like to see Jumbo Interactive do on the charts?
Yeah, I mean, we've had sort of like 12, 14 weeks there in that sort of pretty tight 1050, 950 channel there. So that's a bit of a base building sort of setup as well. So we're now at quite a few higher lows there, and now we've broken above that 1050 as well. And as there's definitely a lot of volume as well. So possibly accumulation taking place here. So yeah, so I agree with you there. I mean, it takes a little while. There's this the lottery cycle sort of go through a sweet spot, and then it will sort of then it goes through a bit of a lull there. That's something that's been a constant really with the stock and with the company and with it's just the nature of the industry there. Sort of go, the jackpots aren't sort of you don't get one a month there. They tend to all come in sort of clusters together. Yeah, and then you go through a bit of a dry spot for quite a while here. So maybe a little bit like the Sydney weather at the moment.
When it rains, it pours.
Yes. So, it's a little bit like that. So I do think this is, it's in a market there where everything's pretty pricey there. This is not expensive there. And I think the cycle, signs you've already starting to see a few jackpots here in the last month or two as well. So that will move the needle for them.
Well, that's positive to see that on Jumbo Interactive and hopefully transpires into their share price and earnings. And we do say thank you very much, Gary Glover, for sharing these insights with us. And we look forward to discussing later in the week more of the momentum leaders. If you want a whole playlist, we'll put that on the right-hand side to see what Gary's been saying and thinking about the momentum leaders on the market. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Chris.